This video is powered by the pros at Pascal Air Plumbing and Electric. Arkansas owned, Arkansas operated. GoPascal.com.
As we do with all of our guests, we go to the McLarty Daniel Hotline, where Pat Smith is waiting, co-host of Three Man Front in Birmingham on WJOX. Pat, I was watching Nick Saban's every week conversation with Pat McAfee yesterday, and not only did I see one smile, I saw several smiles. And I know you and I were joking about this earlier this week. Does this seem like a more joyful Nick Saban than maybe we've seen in recent years?
Well, during the fall camp, there were articles being written on how many times he smiles, the percentage of smiles, and how that correlates to Alabama seasons and victories and championships and stuff like that. And the fandom didn't like it. They didn't like it at all. I mean, they want a pissed-off Nick Saban like you saw at Mississippi State, when he's ripping into players. And, of course, right after that victory at Starkville, he told everybody that Miss Terry told him that he needed to start being more harsh on the players. And so that's what you got that night in Starkville. He wasn't that fired up in College Station until the very end of the game when some clock management issues happened. But it does seem like that he's kind of taken a step back the last couple of years of being that fiery coach, because us in the media covering him on a daily basis, we could kind of chart it. Anytime that Alabama was playing an opponent, usually it was Sisters of the Poor or, Mercer, Georgia Southern, whoever it may be, you're going to get a speech that week. And so I'm not trying to chide Arkansas for coming in. I know it has not been this kind of season that Arkansas thought that they would have so far. But you got a couple speeches this week from Nick Saban, which typically means on weeks that he feels like his team might not be, let's just say, focused on the opponent at hand, you're going to get these speeches, and we got that a couple times this week. So that kind of told us in the media, one, that practices have not been as fiery as they were the week before, and if you don't pay attention to what and who you're playing on Saturday, you can end up getting beat, because this team has a very short margin of success based on their offensive prowess this year. So I hope that answered your question.
So, Pat, to that point, 11 a.m. game. I know it's homecoming. It's still 11 a.m. I've already talked to a bunch of fans that are mad about it. You played an emotional game against the A&M next week. We know all how important the third Saturday of October is to this fan base and this team. I mean, is Alabama going to sweep walk into this game despite Saban pushing his team not to do exactly the opposite?
That's what he's concerned with, and based on his comments throughout the week, as I just mentioned, he is concerned. I mean, first and foremost, last time Jefferson came into Bryant-Denny Stadium, he lit up that secondary, and don't think that Nick Saban has forgotten about that. And, look at the second half they had in Fayetteville, and, of course, Jalen Milroe had to come in and mop up for Bryce Young. So, yeah, I mean, he's concerned. I mean, the defense is finally playing the way that they want the defense to have been played under Pete Golding. And for whatever reason this year, they have finally taken that next step up. So he feels really good about that. The problem is that you still have a quarterback that he and the rest of the fan base, they feel very uncomfortable with, because his prowess of being able to turn the ball over and make some bad decisions. But he made, for the most part, very good decisions at Texas A&M. I'm not sure if Arkansas's defense can put the pressure on him quite like the Aggies did. But if you do go into a game like that, Ty, at 11 o'clock in the morning, I mean, the homecoming floats are lining up at 4:45 in the morning. Now, that has nothing to do with the football team, but it's just the overall malaise for an 11 o'clock kickoff at Tuscaloosa. It's something that has not happened a lot under Nick Saban. And so these kids need to be focused, because Arkansas is an SEC opponent, and they've got dudes, and they can come in here and they can make it a very difficult afternoon there in Tuscaloosa.
Pat, I'm sure there's been plenty of calls and plenty of theories floated about what's changed with this Alabama program. I mean, from the outside looking in, it's, we still view it as dominant and ran by, the best coach of all time. But, they've lost a little bit of the edge, it appears, in the last couple of years. What in your estimate has changed? Is it portal? Is it NIL? Or is it something more internal?
I think those two items that you mentioned, yes, absolutely. I think that has leveled the playing field for everyone. But I think I want to go to the recruiting aspect. Alabama continues to recruit at a very high level on every, February 3rd, 4th, 5th, whenever the signing day is every year. You're going to have Alabama still fall in the top five. They bring dudes to Tuscaloosa. But I'll tell you, they have misevaluated some of this so-called five-star talent that have come in. I don't know if it's because once they get on campus, their attitudes don't change. They don't go through what Nick Saban calls the process. Now that the transfer portal is there, you're not going to have guys like Tua Tagovailoa or Mac Jones or Jalen Hurts or Devontae Smith, guys that waited their turn. Now, folks, if they're not on the field as a freshman, hey, I'm going to go get in the portal and I'm going to go make money and I'm going to go somewhere else in place. I mean, that has leveled the playing field. But I go back to just the overall recruiting. There's been some misses on some kids, some high star kids that they really believe that were going to be able to come in and be that next Savage up, so to speak. That was always what you heard the last 10 to 12 years at Alabama. Well, if somebody gets hurt, it's no big deal. It's just the next Savage up. I mean, because they got all these five stars. Well, they have misevaluated on some of those because they do not have the playmakers that they thought they were going to have. They also missed in the transfer portal. They had Tyler Harrell last year, a wide receiver from Louisville that they believed was going to be the next Mechie or the Williams, and he got on the field, I think, for 2 games. You had Eli Ricks, who was all preseason SEC cornerback coming from LSU. He barely played. He could not, get on the first team towards the end of the year. So they've had some misses, not to mention Tyler Buckner from Notre Dame. That was a disaster at South Florida. So it's been a combination of all those, but I think you guys could see it just as well as anybody else. It's just the overall leveling of the playing field in college football thanks to the NIL and the transfer portal.
What factor is breaking in 2 new coordinators on the staff? I know, Nick Saban's used to changing coaches out and changing coordinators that become head coaches oftentimes, but 2 in 1 year, transition at quarterback, how big a role has that played in how this season's unfolded so far for Bama?
I think on the offensive side, I think it's been huge because, one thing's for sure, even when Bill O'Brien came in as offensive coordinator a couple years ago, Nick Saban walked in his office and Nick Saban threw down the Alabama playbook that had been used by Steve Sarkisian and by Lane Kiffin and says, this is the new standard at Alabama offensively. You can add pieces to that playbook, but this is the Bible when it comes to Alabama offense moving forward. You can add to it, but this is the baseline. And so that's what Bill O'Brien did. And, of course, now Tommy Rees coming in, he's more of a tight end type offensive coordinator. You're seeing more tight end sets that he's brought in. They wanted to play more bully ball, the offensive line. It's taken them a little bit of time to get going. On the defensive side, you got Kevin Steele. Kevin Steele has been at Alabama 3 different times under Nick Saban. You know exactly what you get with Kevin Steele. Kevin Steele knows exactly what Nick Saban expects and wants from his defense. So from that angle, that has not been an issue whatsoever. But the offensive side, it's been a little bit of filling out of Tommy Rees and what he can bring to the table and kind of add to that base playbook. And let's just be honest, they just did not have that quarterback, that high-level type quarterback that we've been used to seeing at Alabama, and that's been the issue, them trying to run the offense that they ultimately want to run.
Pat Smith with us here on the McClarty Daniel Hotline. Pat, one of the issues with that offense is the offensive line, and I know a lot of Arkansas fans are surprised to hear that Alabama's given up more sacks than Arkansas. They've given up 26 this season. There's a lot of talent there. I was looking through the roster last night. A lot of those guys are still 4 and 5 stars. Why hasn't that meshed? I know there's a new offense like you referenced, but I'm not used to seeing Bama's offensive line this behind in 6 games through the season.
I'm going to defend them just a little bit because it also comes to the quarterback not having that internal clock, knowing when to throw the ball away. He was sacked 5 times at Texas A&M. When you go back and you look at the all-22 tape of that game, there were 3 instances that he should have gotten rid of the ball and taken an incompletion and thrown it out of bounds. That has been the multiple issues even in the Texas game. When you go back and look, there were 11 plays in the Texas game where he had wide receivers, and instead of going through his progressions, he locked in on one guy. He didn't throw it to an open receiver. They had 3 different scoring plays dialed up that if Jalen Milroe would have made the right decision down the field, they would have scored touchdowns against Texas. That is the type of decision-making that everyone got spoiled because Bryce Young was like a computer or your laptop. I mean, he was making decisions so quickly and going through his progressions. You don't have that with Jalen Milroe. That doesn't mean that Jalen Milroe can't ultimately be that guy, but he just does not have that internal clock yet. So, yes, the offensive line has struggled. I agree with you 100%, Ty. But I'll also put some of that responsibility on the quarterback. where he is holding the ball too long, or he's not going through his reads or dumping it down to his safety valve, whatever the case may be. So it's been a combination of both. The thing that probably worries Alabama more than anything is they thought that they could play bully ball with this offensive line, and that just has not happened yet. That's why at the Texas A&M game, they couldn't run the ball. Now, that was a great defensive line that the Aggies have, one of the best, if not the best, in the SEC. But the problem is you can't establish that run, then that's going to put a lot of pressure on Jalen Milroe. And let's just be honest, you can't get in a 51-48 shootout with Tennessee next week thinking that Jalen Milroe is going to throw for 400 yards.
So, Pat, I know Jermaine Burton had his best game as a Crimson Tide member this last week. Milroe and him really got on the same page, but that is a position group that's lacked. I know it was a talking point in the offseason. Arkansas has secondary issues in terms of injuries right now. We don't know 100% who's going to play. Is Alabama going to be able to take advantage of that even at times with the struggling unit?
Last week, going into the Texas A&M game, they believed that if the offensive line was able to give Jalen Milroe enough time, that Jalen Milroe could have success down the field, quick slants, guys getting behind the secondary, because they realized that if there was a weakness in DJ Durkin's defense, it was the secondary. So if the offensive line could help Jalen Milroe out, they were going to take shots down the field, and you saw what happened. I think Alabama is viewing the same situation with Arkansas. Once again, can the offensive line play the game that they're expected to play? And Jalen Milroe makes those good decisions because there were multiple times where Burton, you pretty much knew it was almost, I mean, I'm not saying that he's like Bowers at Georgia, but it was like the Auburn game against Georgia. You knew that Bowers was going to get the ball. At that point in the Aggies game, you know that Jermaine Burton was going to be the number one guy. He was going to be targeted, and they could not stop him. So I think Alabama's key tomorrow is they're going to try to establish the run. That's what Nick Saban is trying to do every single game with this team. But no, they're going to take their shots, and for them, they would love to be able to get out to a big lead and hopefully be able to set on that and not have a stressful third and fourth quarter against Arkansas with Tennessee straight ahead.
Yeah. Pat, let's close you out on this one. It's not often Alabama hosts 11 a.m. games. Arkansas, we were trying to remember the last time Arkansas played at 11 in Tuscaloosa. What do you think?
First time ever, Tommy.
First time ever. What will the environment be like? What will how do you think the fans react? I know this is not normal operating procedure for Alabama football to kick off at 11.
I anticipate that probably after the game, depending on the outcome of the game, you might get Nick Saban chastising the fan base or the student body, leaving at halftime or not showing up till 11:45 or noon or whatever the case may be. I think you might have a little smart aleck comment possibly from Nick Saban, but from a fan base standpoint, listen, Ty, you're in Tuscaloosa. Tuscaloosa is just like Fayetteville and other college towns around the SEC. It's really tough to get folks out of bed at 11 o'clock in the morning, let alone students that go to the university. So it's going to be an interesting environment to say the least. And I think that plays to Arkansas's benefit. I really do. So, I mean, this is not going to be the electric atmosphere that you had for the Texas game. So take advantage of it.
BetOnline is your number one source for all your betting needs. Get the latest odds, lines, and matchup reports for baseball, boxing, golf, and more. BetOnline continues to be the fastest and easiest way to place your wagers, including live betting and your favorite casino and card games available to play right from your phone. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and get in on the action. Remember to use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, where the game starts.